Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Uh-huh.
We love to get our hands dirty with some news source material, and today we're going to be looking at Cuban entrepreneurship.
Oh, this is going to be interesting.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got one kind of like academic paper that we're going to be looking at, and then a really cool article from a magazine called Cuba Joven, which is a Cuban youth magazine.
Okay.
So we're going to be looking at, one source that's kind of like, lays out the whole concept of entrepreneurship in the Cuban context.
Right.
And then we're going to look at some, real world examples from some young entrepreneurs in Cuba.
Nice.
So the core mission for this deep dive is to uncover the big ideas that Cubans have for growing their economy and, also the hurdles that they face. But we really want to focus on just the economic aspects of this.
Gotcha.
So I'm excited to get into this.
Yeah, me too.
All right, so let's start with this academic paper. And what's really interesting to me is how this paper goes beyond just, the individual entrepreneur and really dives into the whole ecosystem that they operate in.
Yeah, and that's really important because, entrepreneurship isn't just about personal drive.
Right.
It's also about how individual initiative works within the larger economic landscape and is influenced by it.
So it's about seeing the whole picture.
Exactly.
Not just these isolated, success stories.
Yeah, and to really grasp that bigger picture, I think we need a little bit of historical context. Cuba's views on private enterprise have really evolved over time.
Oh, absolutely.
If you look back to 2011, that was kind of a pivotal moment when some restrictions on self-employment started to loosen up.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
It was a sign of things to come.
And then, of course, recently the legalization of MSMEs.
Yes, MSMEs or micro, small, and medium enterprises.
Exactly. And that seems like that was when things really started to take off. The Cuba Joven article is buzzing with excitement about this new ways of MSMEs.
Yeah, and for good reason. Almost 5,530 new businesses have popped up. And what's really striking is that 70% of them seem to be operating beyond just basic subsistence.
So they're not just like scraping by.
No, they're aiming for growth and expansion.
That's amazing. We're seeing a lot of these businesses concentrated in manufacturing, construction, and gastronomy. But what really caught my eye was the informatica sector.
Ah, the IT sector.
Yeah, which seems to be doing really well, especially among micro enterprises.
Yeah, and that's a fascinating detail because it hints at a shift towards more knowledge-based industries, which is often a sign of a diversifying and maturing economy.
It's not just about those traditional sectors anymore. It's about embracing innovation and technology.
Absolutely.
And this entrepreneurial surge is really having a big impact on employment. MSMEs in Cuba now employ about 108,000 people, and a significant portion of them, about 45%, were previously unemployed.
Wow, that's a big shift in the labor market.
Yeah, offering new opportunities and potential for economic empowerment.
It's a really positive development, but of course the academic paper also points out some serious challenges that Cuban entrepreneurs face.
Right.
One of the biggest hurdles is this whole complex web of trade regulations.
Yeah, the paper explains that right now, MSMEs have to go through state-owned companies for all their import and export needs. I imagine that creates a lot of red tape and slows things down.
Oh, absolutely. It can be really frustrating for entrepreneurs who are trying to operate in a global marketplace.
Right, they need to be agile.
Exactly. They need efficiency, but this system just creates bottlenecks and delays.
Yeah, and then there's the tax system, which seems to be designed with state-owned enterprises in mind.
Right.
Not really taking into account the unique needs of smaller businesses.
That's a common problem in economies that are moving towards more private sector involvement. The existing framework often just doesn't work for smaller businesses.
Yeah, it's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Exactly.
And on top of all that, access to financing is a major roadblock. The paper mentions that only a tiny fraction of MSMEs actually get loans.
It makes it really hard to scale up and expand.
Yeah, it's a catch-22. They need capital to grow, but they often lack the track record or collateral that lenders want.
Right. So this limited access to financing is a big constraint on their potential.
But even with all these obstacles, the Cuba Joven article paints this vibrant picture of entrepreneurial spirit, especially among young Cubans.
Oh, absolutely.
The article introduces us to three really inspiring university students, Diana, Gabriela, and Made. They're all juggling their studies while running their own businesses.
It's amazing how driven they are. What kind of businesses are they running?
Well, Diana and her sister have this handmade jewelry business called Bloom and Accessorios.
Oh, cool.
And Gabriela, who's studying tourism, co-founded a natural cosmetics line with her mom. It's called S Natural.
Nice.
And Made, a chemistry student, started a crocheted accessories business called Lab Crafted Crochet.
Those are such great examples of young Cubans using their skills to create unique products.
Yeah, it's a mix of traditional craftsmanship and modern business sense.
That-
And they're not just relying on traditional methods. They're using social media to market their products and engage with customers.
Of course. This generation is digitally native and globally connected.
All right. They're
Right.
building their brands and reaching customers in new ways.
It's really inspiring to see their resourcefulness and adaptability.
They're not waiting for opportunities, they're creating their own.
Exactly. But what about the bigger picture? What kind of future do these entrepreneurs see for themselves and for Cuba's economy?
Well, both the academic paper and the Cuba Joven article point to a shared desire for a more supportive entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Okay.
They're calling for better access to financing, better training programs, and fairer regulations.
So they're basically saying we have the drive and the ideas, but we need the right environment to flourish.
Exactly. It's about creating a system that empowers entrepreneurs, not holds them back.
Makes sense. And the Cuba Joven article even includes some interesting comments from readers offering different perspectives.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, Osvaldo makes a really good point about the need for university curriculums to do more to encourage entrepreneurial thinking.
So it's about equipping young people, not just with the skills to find jobs, but also with the mindset to create jobs.
Exactly. And Roberto's comment highlights that the entrepreneurial spirit is already there in Cuba, but it's facing some serious obstacles.
So there's this sense of both optimism and frustration.
Yeah, I think that really speaks to how complex this situation is.
Yeah. On one hand, you have this incredible energy and desire to build something new.
Right.
And on the other hand, you have these systemic challenges that need to be addressed.
It's a fascinating dynamic for sure.
It really is a story of resilience, innovation, and the pursuit of economic empowerment in the face of adversity. And it's a story that's still being written.
Absolutely. It's kind of like this balancing act, you know? Cuba is trying to grow its economy through entrepreneurship,
Right.
but they're also trying to manage this legacy of a centrally planned economy.
Yeah, it's like they're walking a tightrope, trying to find that balance between individual initiative and the existing system.
Exactly. What do you think are the key things that will determine how this all plays out?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is how effectively Cuba deals with those structural challenges we talked about.
Right, like access to financing, trade regulations,
Yeah.
the tax system.
Those are all essential,
Right,
but it's not just about changing policies.
right.
It's about creating a culture that really values entrepreneurship.
You need that cultural shift.
Right.
It's not just ticking boxes on a checklist.
No, it's about creating an environment where entrepreneurial thinking is encouraged and rewarded.
Exactly. It's about taking risks, celebrating innovation,
Right.
and giving entrepreneurs the support they need to succeed.
We were talking about Osvaldo's comment earlier about education.
Yeah.
You know how universities need to do more to prepare students for entrepreneurship?
Yeah,
Do you think that could be a big part of the solution?
absolutely. Imagine if universities included more entrepreneurial thinking in their courses. So students would not only have the skills to find jobs, but also the mindset to create jobs.
It's about becoming job creators, not just job seekers.
Exactly. And that shift in thinking could be huge.
Yeah, it could really empower a new generation of Cubans to shape their own future.
It's clear that there's no easy answer here.
Yeah.
Cuba has to find its own path.
Right.
They have to find a way to balance their unique social and economic goals.
With the energy of a growing entrepreneurial sector.
Yeah, and that's what makes this whole thing so interesting to watch.
Right.
We're seeing a society in transition,
Yeah.
trying to figure out its future.
And it's the individual stories like those of Deanna, Gabriella, and Medei that make all of this real.
Exactly. It's not just abstract concepts.
Right. Their stories bring it to life.
Their journeys show us the human side of this economic transformation.
They're not just statistics.
No, they're real people with dreams and ambitions.
And they're willing to work hard and make things happen.
Their successes and challenges give us a glimpse into what's really going on.
Yeah. Their stories are inspiring and insightful.
They show us that entrepreneurship is not easy.
You have to be tough.
It takes courage, creativity,
And a strong belief in your vision.
especially in an environment that's constantly changing,
It reminds us that economic forces are driven by people.
by their desire to create and build a better life.
And that's what we're seeing in Cuba right now.
It's a story that's still unfolding
The decisions Cuba makes in the next few years will have a huge impact.
on the future of its entrepreneurial ecosystem.
So for someone who's trying to understand the economic situation in Cuba, what are the key things we've learned?
I think the main thing is that entrepreneurship in Cuba is a really complex thing.
Yeah.
It's influenced by history, society, politics.
It's a lot to consider.
We're seeing a gradual shift towards private enterprise.
Right.
But it's not without its challenges.
And those challenges are tough.
But they can be overcome.
They need smart solutions and a commitment to creating a supportive environment.
Exactly. Access to financing, streamlined trade regulations, a fair tax system, these are all crucial.
But again, it's not just about policies and regulations,
It's about building a culture that values entrepreneurship.
where people are encouraged to take risks and innovate.
And we're already seeing signs of that cultural shift happening.
There's definitely a lot of energy and optimism among young Cubans.
They want to build businesses and contribute to their country's growth.
They represent a new generation of entrepreneurs.
They're digitally savvy, globally connected, and full of ideas.
Their energy and creativity could be the key to Cuba's economic future.
It's fascinating to see this interplay between individual action and systemic change.
We're not just observing from afar.
We're getting a close look at a society on the verge of transformation.
And by understanding the challenges and opportunities facing Cuban entrepreneurs
We can gain a better understanding of economic development as a whole.
and the human stories that drive it.
Exactly.
This deep dive has really shown us the dynamism and resilience of the human spirit.
It really has.
So we've really explored a lot about Cuban entrepreneurship, haven't we?
Yeah. We've gone from the very basics to some real in-depth looks at what entrepreneurs are doing.
From theory to practice. It's
Exactly.
been really fascinating.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the biggest thing we've learned?
I think it's the resilience of the Cuban people. They face so many challenges.
Right. Limited financing, complex trade regulations,
Yeah.
a tax system that doesn't really work for them.
Exactly. And yet they're still finding ways to make it work.
Yeah, they're really creative.
They're building businesses, creating jobs, and helping their communities.
It's a real testament to human ingenuity and determination.
Absolutely.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
not just waiting around for opportunities, they're making their own.
Exactly. And often with very limited resources.
Yeah. And in a system that's constantly changing.
It's really impressive.
And I think it's a lesson for all of us.
No matter where you are in the world,
If you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to have that grit
that belief in your vision.
and the willingness to adapt and overcome obstacles.
We've also seen how individual actions can really have an impact.
Yeah.
These entrepreneurs aren't just building businesses.
Right.
They're changing the whole economic landscape of Cuba.
And their success is a sign of how Cuba is moving towards a more diverse economy.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the one thing you want our listeners to think about?
That's a good question. I think it's this. How could Cuba create an environment where these entrepreneurs can really thrive?
So not just survive, but really flourish.
Exactly. What if they had the support they needed?
Access to capital.
Fair regulations.
A culture that celebrates innovation.
It makes you wonder what Cuba could achieve.
It's a future full of possibilities.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Cuban entrepreneurship.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you learned something new and maybe even feel a little bit inspired.
Until next time.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those entrepreneurial spirits burning bright.